All right. Well, we are going to go ahead and get started. Of course, we will see some other people kind of join into this webinar, but for everyone who is here, hello and thank you for being here. We are so excited today to discuss all things SYA Spain, and we are so grateful that you made it to this special event. We only have one a year, and so we are grateful that you're here. My name is Maggie Bland. I am an Assistant Director of Admissions at School Year Abroad, and I am joined by an awesome team today, and you will hear from all of them in a little bit. But before we start, I'll just ask our participants to wave. So Meghan Roof, who is our Resident Director of SYA Spain. We also have two current SYA Spain students. We have Elenia and Ashton. If you both could wave, we will hear from them in a little bit. We will also hear from their parents. So we have Marlo and Carmen joining us as well. And Carmen will just be on audio, but we're so grateful. Thank you all in advance for being here and for sharing your perspectives. So again, I am part of the admissions team here at SYA. I kind of wear a few hats at School Year Abroad. I am one of 4 members of my team who have been traveling throughout the United States, presenting School Year Abroad to tons of different high schools across the United States. And starting after acceptances are mailed out, I will also be the Spain country manager, which means that I will help with all enrollment processes, including visas and everything like that. We don't have to worry about that now after our acceptances go out. But for right now, you may have heard from me if I visited your school, so hello. But you also may have heard from one of my 3 coworkers who visited your school, or your school is in their territory. So don't worry if you've heard from another member of my team thus far in this admissions process. And once again, after those decisions go out, I will be your point person for SYA Spain. Just briefly, Spain and studying abroad in Spain with a host family has a very special place in my heart. I did a program just like SYA where I lived with a family and fully immersed myself in the language. And clearly it had a very big impact on me. And so I'm very excited to answer all of your admissions related questions. So we are going to get started with kind of an outline of the event and then a video. So we will have a short video about SYA Spain, followed by a discussion with Meghan, Ashton, and Elenia, just about kind of a day in the life in Spain and common questions that come up about classwork and extracurricular activities and host families, etc. Then I will jump into a short discussion with our parents who have joined us, also about kind of common questions we hear from SYA families. And then we will have about 20 minutes for our question and answer session. So I know a lot of you have submitted questions already, and I have jotted those down. And so I have a big list going. So we will try to get to as many as we can, again, while also keeping an eye on the time. And then we will wrap up. So without further ado, we will get going with our video, which our admissions team will play. Thank you, Shauna. Here we go.
I decided to do SYA for a number of reasons. I think what it boils down to is really that pursuit of wanting to be a part of something greater. I really didn't look at it as a step away. I looked at it as more of a chapter in my life. Every day you overcome not just one new thing, 10 new things. And that's just drastically gonna change how I look at things. What SYA does best is make students comfortable being uncomfortable. You really start to embrace the idea of being uncomfortable. As much as SYA attracts a specific type of student, I think SYA attracts a specific type of teacher that is really, really deeply invested in us taking advantage of this year and using these opportunities to the best of our abilities.
In art, we're at the museums, we're asking our families about art. It's all extremely interactive with the community. It's all built and shaped for this city, which is really special.
In our science class, we learn things in class and then go out into the field, go out into the community and really interact with it in person. And we do a lot of field trips to the mountains and to the surrounding natural areas to really experience firsthand what we learn in class.
So the Capstone Project is the culminating end of year project for all SYA students, but it's very much grounded in the fact that we are in Spain, we are in Saragosa. If you just look at people's capstones, they're interviewing different political figures in Spain. This is all in Spanish. Throughout the year, I've progressed entirely into be able to discuss complex topics.
I feel confident saying anything. I can talk to anyone, and it's something I plan to keep up for my whole life. It's really a gift.
I think my biggest takeaway from SYA hasn't even been like my language development, but it's like me as a person. Like I have just grown in ways that I can't even explain, and I'm so proud of everything that I've like overcome, accomplished, and have like grown into being like today. And like I honestly don't think I could have done it without SYA or like without the people here.
Without a doubt, SYA opens doors. SYA forces you to grow as a person, as an individual, as a member of a community. It really does.
For anyone who's on the fence about going to SYA or even applying, the fact that you're even thinking about it probably means that you're somebody who should be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shauna, for playing that video. I know that was really exciting to see, but we're happy to now dive into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of our program. So I'm going to pass it over to our director of our SYA Spain program, Meghan Roof, who will facilitate our discussion with our students as well.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Maggie. Hola, buenas noches a todos. Bueno, desde aquí, it's the nighttime here in Spain. My name is Meghan Roof. The students call me Senora Roof, and I'm very happy to be here with you and to be able to have a conversation now with two of our wonderful students, Ilenia and Ashton, who will introduce themselves in just a moment. Also, just a big thanks to Marlo and Carmen, who are going to be helping out in a little bit as well. So yes, it's just very exciting to have all of you on who are thinking about coming next year, either for the full year or for the semester. We already have some questions about that decision-making process that we'll answer in just a little bit. I think the video does a really great job of showing you what Saragosa looks like, some of the things that we do in our classes and outside of the classroom. And so I think we're going to get into that conversation, but it's a really great kind of encapsulation of what the program is like. So, Ashton y Ilenia, ¿queréis presentaros un momento?
Hola, me llamo Ilenia y mis pronombres son she, her, ella. Soy de Napa, en California, y este año soy un junior.
Muy bien, gracias. Ashton.
Hola a todos, bienvenidos. Me llamo Ashton y uso los pronombres él, he, him, y soy un junior. Soy de Massachusetts y voy a Concord Academy, ubicado en Concord, Massachusetts.
Muy bien, gracias. I think you guys probably got the main gist of that. Most of you out there probably can speak Spanish already, which is great. So we're going to start our conversation out by talking a little bit about kind of our school day, our curriculum. And our school day is kind of a traditional time schedule. So we start at 8:45 in the morning, and then our classes end at 4:15. And students take 6 classes while they're with us. So they take 2 elective classes. They have 2 Spanish classes. One is called Experiential Spanish. That's where the fieldwork comes in, and then more of a Spanish class that's focused specifically on the language, not as much about going out into the community. And then all students also take English and math unless they are able to, they've already finished their graduation requirements for math, and those students take a 3rd elective. So Ilenia and Carmen, or I'm sorry, and Ashton, could you talk to us a little bit about the classes, about the fieldwork that you do in your experiential class? Ilenia, you want to start?
Yeah, so experiential class is less of a language class and more of a class where you learn about the culture of Spain. And with that, we do a lot of field work, which is where we go out into the city, and sometimes we'll go and talk to people and ask them their opinions on things, how they feel about certain topics. And other times we'll go into stores and see, just observe what's in there, and we'll just go around the city and use the city as a place of learning. And I find it really, really enjoyable. It's a great class that you can't really find outside of this program, and definitely outside of Spain, because it uses Spain as its classroom.
Gracias. Ashton?
Yeah, adding on to what Ilenia said, I think that experiential, if not my favorite class, is one of my favorite classes here at SYA Spain. And just like she was saying, it has a lot to do with the fact that it's all about immersion and the experience here in Spain instead of like actual Spanish. And the first time we did field work, I found it really weird that my teacher sent me out into the street with a group of people to go talk to the people just walking in the street. I was like, I just got here like a week ago. My Spanish isn't the best. How am I supposed to understand? What are they going to think of me just coming up to them and asking questions? But, even though it was awkward at first, it's really one of the ways that I found myself learning more about Spanish language, culture, and just the environment here in Saragosa, because it is a really special city. And I feel like through this class is where I really get to see that and learn about that.
And if I could add on to that real quickly, I think it's also a great way to measure how far your Spanish has come, because like Ashton was saying at the beginning, you're kind of lost. You're in this huge city. You don't know the streets all that well. Spanish is still new. And so speaking to native speakers who speak very quickly, it can be really scary and daunting, and you miss every other word sometimes. But by now it comes really, really naturally, and we can have full-on discussions with everyone we're talking to.
Muy bien, gracias. I just want to clarify, because we had a quick question, that Ashton and Elena are both in Spain right now. So they're doing the full year program. So they've already been here since September, and they're both at their host families' houses right now. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the elective classes. So we have a wide range of elective classes. We have some classes that are focused on economics. We have science, environmental science class. Then we have art history. We have the history of Spanish through film. We also have a theater class. So those classes all give students an opportunity to either take classes that they might need for a graduation credit at their home school. A lot of those classes do count for graduation credits that you might have at your home school, but also just explore the culture, the history of Spain, current events in the classes that they're taking as electives. And we also have civilization and culture. So Ashton and Elena, could you both just mention the elective classes you're taking and tell us just a little bit about them?
So I'm taking art history, which is a contemporary art history class. So it focuses on everything in what is considered contemporary art. We do a lot of field work in that class. We'll go around to the museums in Saragosa to see exhibitions, to see permanent installations. And if you remember from the video, that woman with the frizzy like golden hair, that's Soleil, that's our art history teacher. She's fantastic. We all love her. And it's just a really fun, engaging class where you get to learn a subject that isn't offered in other schools, especially in the US. And it really takes advantage of the city that we're in. Oh, also my second elective is Spanish history and culture, which I would say is actually my favorite class. It's a discussion-based class where we talk about Spanish history and Spanish culture. And I can't believe how much I've learned from that class, especially just about the history of the place, because I didn't know much coming into the program. And with all the discussion and with our great teacher, Alvaro, I feel like I've learned a lot more about Spain and what makes it what it is.
Great, muchas gracias. Thank you guys so much. Okay, let's move to talk a little bit about life outside of school. So obviously, school is a huge part of the SYA program, but there's a lot of other parts of the SYA program that are equally as important. I think one of the most rewarding experiences that our students have is living with a host family. And I, like Maggie, studied abroad. My experience was while I was at university, but very similar in the sense that I lived with a host family, and I was in a smaller, I was in Pamplona, so it wasn't as big as Zaragoza, but it also wasn't a huge city like a Madrid or a Barcelona, which was a really easy city to also integrate into. So the host family experience for me was one of the best things about my time when I was there. And so I wanted Ashton and Elena to talk to us a little bit about what it's like living with a host family. A lot of times we get questions about, are you super nervous at the beginning? Is it too difficult to get integrated? What about, do you understand your host family when you get there? I did not understand my host family at all when I arrived. I actually had to have them write down their names on a piece of paper because I couldn't understand what they were saying when they introduced themselves. So I know from experience as well, but why don't you two tell us a little bit about how that's been for you? You want to start, Ashton?
Yeah, before I start talking about my amazing host family, I just want to go back to the other question and mention my elective classes I'm taking here at SYA Spain.
Oh,
Um,
sí, yes. So sorry.
No pasa nada. Like Elenia, I'm also taking Spanish Civilization and Culture with Alvaro, who is also my advisor here in Spain. And like she was saying, the class just gives an opportunity to really get to know Spain and how it became how it is, and how, like, you know, the Spain we're here in today, like how it became what it is, and just like a lot of history, which like for me was something that I felt like I really needed in order to really understand the culture here. Because before coming to Spain, I had a lot of like stereotypes in my head, and I thought all of these things. But being able to be in that class with Alvaro and talk about the history of Spain and just kind of break it all down and see it from a different perspective was something that I felt like I really needed to really embrace my experience here and appreciate my surroundings. And on top of that, I really like how in the class we don't only focus on history, but we talk a lot about the present. And an activity that we recently did in class before break was compare the political system in the US to the one here in Spain. And it was really just eye-opening to see the differences and, like, the similarities. And it just kind of gave me a different point of view when thinking about, I know, like, living in the US for me, I just, like, it's the US, and just coming to Spain and seeing how things are different. That's something that this class has really helped me like see, which, I think is really valuable. Um, and then my other elective is environmental science, and I'm being totally honest. The first week in this class, not only did I not understand any of the concepts, but the Spanish and the vocabulary is just so intense and not typical and not day-to-day Spanish vocabulary that I was totally lost. So it's definitely a challenge for me, and I feel like that's part of the reason why I really enjoy the class. And with that being said, I've been able to know a lot of growth and like my Spanish speaking abilities and really grasping onto the concepts, which I feel like is a huge part of the process. So yeah. Oh, and my host family. um, to say a bit about my host family, or to say the least, they're just amazing. I live with my host mom, Anna, my host dad, Enrique, and I have three older host siblings who are all above the age of 19. One of them studying in university in Madrid. One of them lives here at home, and my oldest host sister lives on her own, but only a 10-minute walk. And I feel like my host family is definitely essential role in my life here in Spain. They're always the people that I come home to have conversations with, and people who I've really been able to rely on since arriving here in Spain. I know, like, especially the first month was really hard not being able to be with my family. And, I was in the mindset that, like, I've just met these people, they've welcomed me into their home. Am I ever going to get close to them? But just being able to see how close I am with my host family and how they've been able to support me upon my arrival here in Spain, and just see how I've been able to integrate into the family and really become one, is something really special to me. And on top of that, I do believe that my Spanish speaking abilities have increased, and a lot of it is due to living with my host family and being with them and speaking Spanish all the time. Um, I know something we say in Cole a lot at school is like, in Cole, you have to speak Spanish. And we do we do speak Spanish at Cole, but like coming back to my host family's house and not having the option to speak English was really a challenge for me at first. And I feel like that's what really broke the ice for me in terms of like my Spanish speaking abilities being able to like skyrocket in a sense. So yeah, I would say that host families are a very important part to like a student's stay in Spain. Um, and they've just become my family, like the one I have in the US, and I'm looking forward to being able to continue this relationship with them as I grow up, and being able to like consider them a part of my family.
Bien, gracias. ¿Y Elenia?
Yeah, I definitely coming here, I think the host family experience is probably the most nerve-wracking part of this whole program, just because you're going to be staying with a whole new family in a whole new culture using a whole new language. So I remember being on the bus arriving from Madrid to Saragosa and just going over and over like how I could describe my flight, how I'm feeling in Spanish, so I would have sentences prepared to be able to communicate with them. But I think that hands down, my host family is the best part of my experience here in Saragosa. I have a wonderful family of my host mother, Isabel, and 2 older host siblings who are 18 and 20. And with them, I feel like I learn, well, first of all, I learn the most Spanish for sure here in the house, just because there's no other option but to be engaging in Spanish. And then also, I feel like I learned the most about Spanish culture here in the house, just because sure, you can go to school and learn about the political system and history and all of that. But being with an actual Spanish family who are living proof of Spanish culture, you actually get to see it firsthand and start to live that Spanish culture yourself. And yeah, I feel like my favorite times with them is our meal times, when we can just sit around the dinner table and talk. I'm finally able to pick up on their fast slang, which took a moment, but now I'm able to communicate back with them, and I love them, and I think they're such an important and special part of this experience here in Spain.
Muy bien, muchas gracias. So the other topic that I mentioned before is our extracurriculars program. So I think it's important to point out that in Spain and in general in Europe, the sports and the activities are not generally tied directly to a school. They tend to be clubs that are outside of school. So you get a good mix of people who are coming from different schools. Depending on the activity you decide to do, it might be different ages as well. And a great thing about Zaragoza is that you have a city that is large enough to pretty much have everything that you could think of that you would want to do as an extracurricular, except for water sports, you know, in the ocean, I guess, would be one that you don't, but we do have the Rio Ebro. There's rowing teams that you can, you know, be a part of if you're into rowing, for example. But any other sport that you can think of, art, dance, cooking, there's just a huge range of activities that students can do. So we have some students who come and decide to continue an activity that they're already a part of back in the US. So they continue to run on a cross-country team or to play volleyball or to do a certain type of dance. And then we have a lot of students who decide to try something new or combine things and do multiple extracurricular activities. So why don't you two tell us a little bit about what you all have done since you've been here, and if you're thinking about trying anything else for the next, I guess we still have 5 months. So Ilenia, you want to start this time?
Sure. Coming here, I was really excited about the fact that I could kind of choose whichever thing I wanted to do. Like the whole world was at my feet, especially because Saragosa is a big city, so it has so many options. I'm a dancer, so of course I want to dance, and I am dancing. I'm doing contemporary and heels classes, which I absolutely love. I feel like I connect with my generation of Spaniards through my dance classes, just because those are the times I get to interact with them and talk with them and learn about their lives. I also, in the first semester, I tried rowing, which I didn't love, but I tried it. And I started ceramics class, which I had never done before, but I've always really wanted to do. I'm still doing it. I think it's one of my favorite after-school activities that I do. We go to this beautiful workshop run by this wonderful woman named Yanka, and we sit for 2.5 hours and do pottery. We can play music through our AirPods. It's always warm and cozy in there. And then midway through the class, we'll have a 20-minute break and have a little snack of cheeses and breads and meats and jams and little cakes that everyone brings, and everyone stands around with tea and shares just stories from their lives. And I think it's a really special, very Spanish experience.
Muy bien. Y Ashton?
Yeah, like Elenia was saying, I feel like a big part of coming to Spain, especially since her and I are full year students, I kind of saw the first semester as an opportunity to just kind of like find my bearings and just kind of, you know, get a feel for the place. And with that, I was able to try out a lot of different things, which is something that I feel like I would have been a little bit more hesitant to do back home. So I remember the first month I was looking through, you know, a magazine with all the activities going on in Saragosa, and I was talking with friends at school, you know, just trying to figure out what people are going to try doing. And I found myself trying out and being interested in trying out many different things I would have never imagined. An example of something that I did was a lot of SYA students go to a cooking class together here in Saragosa, where we're with an instructor for an hour and a half, and we just cook. And for me, I'm not the best cook. There's not a lot I can do in the kitchen, but just participating in the cooking class, not only was I able to learn how to, cook some traditional Spanish dishes, but it also gave me the opportunity to use my Spanish and apply it in that space, while also being able to make friendships and create friendships with my peers from school. And I feel like that's an activity that a lot of SYA Spain kids do to just kind of, get in the groove of things. So that is what I did in the beginning. And then with that, I also, Eleni and I share another passion, which is photography. And both of us are actually the two campus photographers here in Spain. And, just being able to take photos in an environment like Saragosa is an opportunity that, I don't really get back home in the same way. Just because there's so much different, unique, and just interesting architecture and different scenes to capture. I really enjoyed doing that here in Spain. And then just an example of trying something like really new out. This afternoon, I just came back from a basketball practice, which, I've never really played basketball before. So it was definitely something that was new for me. But I went with a couple friends from school, and there was a ton of Spanish kids, and we were just able to talk. And kind of like what Elenia was saying, being able to just have conversations with Spanish kids our age is a really like unique opportunity, because we kind of get to learn the language from a different perspective that's relatable to us in a sense, which I think is a really unique opportunity and an opportunity to create friendships with Spanish kids and, better our Spanish.
Great, thank you so much. We had a couple other questions about other activities. Ballet is available. And also swimming, and that is also a sport that we've had students participate in. A nice thing too, I think, to mention is that there tend to be different levels that you can join. And so if you want to try something out, for example, Ashton mentioning basketball, it doesn't tend to be a team like in the US where you have to go every single day after school for, 2.5 hours. You have games constantly. There tend to be teams that you can join that might practice 2 times a week or 3 times a week. So it's not the same level of intensity. If you want that level of intensity, we can find that for you, but there is a good range as well, so that students who want to do a sport but also do ceramics, for example, so that they have time in their schedules for that. Okay. There's other questions. We'll get to those during the Q&A. All right. So our next topic that we wanted to talk about with you all is a little bit more about the host family. Back to the host family, something that we didn't mention before was the host family matching process. I just wanted to quickly mention that since we've already talked about that topic. We have you all fill out an incredible amount of forms when you become an SYA student. And those forms are filled out obviously before you get here. So all of the kinds of things you can imagine, information that we need to have. And one of those forms that's really important is the host family selection form. And so you all let us know what you're looking for. Would you like to have host siblings? Would you like to be with a family that doesn't have children, or whose children are grown and out of the house and only come back to visit sometimes? Do you like having pets in the house or not? All of those kinds of things. And then we also have a lot of information, of course, about our host families. Our host family coordinator is Sole, who's also the art history teacher that Elena was talking about earlier. She knows all of the families incredibly well. We have a great selection of families, and so she matches the families with the students based on what their family dynamic is like, and then what the students have asked for. And we have a very high success rate of students being matched, as Ashton and Elena are both great proof of, matched with families that are really the types of families that they were looking for. So we wanted to also talk a little bit about the city of Zaragoza and what the city is like kind of to move around. Eleni has mentioned a couple times it is a pretty big city, but it's also a very easy city to move around. So I'm going to have you both talk a little bit about the transport, how you both move through the city most of the time. And we can also talk just a little bit about what are some things you like to do in the city that kind of you do when you're hanging out with your friends, for example, when you have free time. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we do when we're outside of the city, some of the school travel that we do. So who would like to start and talk a little bit about what the city of Zaragoza feels like, how you move around the city? Is it easy for you to walk, use the tranvia? Elenia, you want to start?
Yeah, this city, like you said, it is a big city, but it is very, very manageable and easy to navigate. There's a great bus system which goes to practically every part of the city and through the center into the barrios that kind of go around the city. There is a tram line called the tranvía that is easy to take, and we all use it a ton. I did see a question in the question answer box about the safety here in Saragosa. And compared to other cities, I feel like this is the safest city I've ever been in. I've never felt uncomfortable walking alone, even at night. I've never felt harassed or just made to feel uncomfortable. So I do think that the safety here, I do think it feels very, very safe. In our free time, us students, we love to go to restaurants. There is a bunch of great restaurants here, a lot of good Spanish tapas bars. Sushi is very popular here, same with pizza. And so it's been it's a fun hide and seek game to try to find the restaurants and share the names among the students. There's a great park here called Parque Grande, which when it gets warm out, so not currently, we like to go there and just hang out. I love to study there. There's a beautiful library right next to the school that a lot of students go to study at, especially during the winter months. And yeah, I just find I love, because my hometown is a town, so I love living in a city where you walk down a corner and there's 10 shops, 10 restaurants you can go into and discover more about the city.
Great, thank you. And you, Ashton?
Yeah, I would love to touch a little bit on kind of like the layout of Saragossa, which I think is really unique. As Elenia mentioned, it's super accessible with the transportation and it's easy to get from point A to point B and like super easily without any confusion. And for me, that's something I was definitely worried about, getting lost and everything. But fortunately, I haven't gotten lost. And luckily for me, I happen to live in El Casco Viejo, which is like the old town of Saragossa, which is really close to El Centro, where Cole is, and Colegio School. Um, and that's, I have the luxury, sometimes not so much in the cold, to walk to school. It's roughly a 15-minute walk. So I don't use a tranvia, though the tranvia, I walk past it and it's tranvia stops are everywhere. But I am a student who does walk to school, and there are many students who do walk to school. I think, Alenia, you live in the Centro as well, so you probably walk to school too. But there are some students who take buses to school, use a tranvia, and I think the longest commute is roughly 30 minutes through transportation, which, isn't that bad. But then in terms of the city itself, Saragossa, I really didn't know what to expect when picturing Saragossa, because when you search up Saragossa, all you see is El Pilar. And though it is a huge part of Saragossa and just its overall identity, there's so much more to it. And just thinking about living in a city for me was a little bit overwhelming. But when I arrived in Saragossa, I realized that yes, it is a city, but at the same time, it's such a close knit community. I found it to be, um, and I know a word that we use a lot to describe the people in Saragossa is amable, which means kind, helpful, like supportive. And I found that to be very true when I was in the street, confused. My first weeks being here, not really knowing how to get home, I felt super comfortable going up to someone asking, "Oh, do you know where I can find Calle del Coso," which I knew was close to my house. And it's really easy to get help from anyone here, which I think is really an important part of just like the environment here. And then just in terms of how I spend my time here in the city, just with friends, like Alenia mentioned, eating food is a huge part of what us students do here. And I feel like it also says a lot about the Spanish culture. Something I learned my first week here in Spain is that typically on the weekend, typically on a Sunday, families have a comida, which is basically a really long lunch. Which when I was hearing about it, I was like, oh man, are we really going to sit there for 4 hours? But I learned to see it as an opportunity to get to better know my host family and my extended family and just be able to spend time with them. And I think it started to rub off on us students because we sit at cafes for hours just talking. We look at the clock, we're like, no way, we've been here for 3 hours. But yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how we all just get used to sitting around for hours around tables here in Spain, but it really does happen. Okay, great. So I just want to touch briefly before we have our parents chime in for us. I just want to touch briefly on travel. So during the school year, we have 2 big trips that we take, one in the fall and then one in generally February or March. Those are school trips that we go on in groups of about 20 students. I saw a question about the total number of students. Here in Spain, we usually have between 60 and 65 students. So we split the students up into 3 groups and we take them to different regions of Spain. And those are just amazing trips for us as a school to be out of the, out of the place that we normally are, to get to know each other in a different way, and obviously to see some of the other incredible parts of Spain that there are. And then we also we took a day trip to Madrid in the fall. This second semester, we're going to be taking 3 different fieldwork trips. So we're going to be going to Belchite, which is a town that was bombed during the Spanish Civil War that's very close to here. We're also going to be going to an olive grove where they make olive oil, and also to an area where they, I'm not quite sure of the name of it, but where they make honey. So those are going to be tied to the science class, but all of the students will be attending those. I was going to have the students talk about trips, but Maggie, I'm not sure if we have time for that.
Yeah, maybe we'll circle back to that once we get through our parent panel and some of the Q&A, but that's a great one to add to our Q&A.
Okay.
These questions are also great coming in. I know Shauna on our admissions team is answering some through text, and we will circle back to the ones that we can at the end. But thank you, Ashton, Elenia, and Megan, for that awesome portion. I know that's why most of our participants here are here, is to hear from you on the ground in Spain, and also to hear from our parents coming up. So I'm going to kind of open up the floor. I'll start with Marlo and then head over to Carmen, and just let our parents talk a little bit about the decision making process and what it was like to work with your child in terms of, is this something that we are prepared to do, and what did that look like? I know a lot of our parents have heard, a student comes home from a presentation at school saying, hey parents, I want to study abroad for the year in Spain, and our parents are sitting at home saying, what are you talking about? So this is going to be really helpful. And also just if you could also touch a little bit about what you've seen in terms of growth of your child throughout this year, and what have been some highlights in terms of communication from SYA or from your child throughout the time at SYA so far. So Marlo, I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thanks Maggie. And if I forget one of those pieces, please remind me when I finish. But, Elenia initiated the whole idea of going to SYA or going somewhere her freshman year of high school. She knew pretty quickly that she wanted to have some kind of unique out of Napa experience. And she was lucky to be able to meet with a friend of ours daughter who had done SYA in China, which isn't happening right now, but they had a great conversation at the library, and Elenia came home and said, yes, this is exactly what I want to do. So Elenia knew from her freshman year, first semester, probably 3rd week, that this is something that she was planning for. And we were a family, we had no hesitations. We were a family that's traveled a fair amount. And so we embraced this and loved this idea for her and encouraged her along with it. I'll tell you, the application process is real. It's not a fluffy, quick, in half an hour, get it done. It felt for us like a little bit of a preview of what college applications will look like, and learning how we all navigate that together. But she did that really beautifully and independently. And, we were just counting down the days and watching the COVID situation and hoping it would happen. And we couldn't have been happier that she was able to go in September. And the communication before she went was amazing, truly amazing, getting the visa process done, answering our questions, logistics. The host family questionnaire was fabulous. Elenia put down some parameters that she was hoping to get for a host family, and amazingly, the coordinator made it all happen and landed her in this perfect situation. Communication since she's been there has been fabulous. We get updates, I don't know how often, every 3 or 4 weeks. It's not too much, but it's just the right amount. One of the pieces that I think we're really excited about, and Elenia is excited about, is her relationship she'll be forming with Pauline, her advisor and college counselor, while she's there. And I think that's something that's unique for us coming from a public school environment, that she'll have a counselor who will really get to know her and talk with her and work through with her thoughts for college next year as a junior. and the ways in which she's grown, I don't even know where to begin on that one. You know, I was lucky enough to spend a month over there over the holiday break, a week of that in Saragosa and the rest of it traveling elsewhere. And so I got to see Elenia in her element, and it was quite remarkable, navigating the transportation system, showing me her favorite haunts to go, to eat, to go to the parks, to see the river. I got to visit her ceramics class and got to meet her instructor there and see that dynamic. And then I got to spend time with her amazing host family. And, you know, she has taken this opportunity, like I think most SYA students do, because they don't really seem to see it as any other option, to just dive in. And that was the most fantastic part. So she is, you know, going on hikes and going out with her host family, her host brothers and sisters. Her host mom's friend actually pulled me aside after dinner one night and said, you know, I really loved when I first met Elenia that she didn't just wave and say hi and go back into her room. She sat down and engaged with me in Spanish and asked me questions and participated. You know, her extracurriculars that she's found with the help of SYA have been really enriching for her. And then watching her navigate in Spanish, you know, was amazing throughout our entire time that we were traveling in Spain. And maybe one of my favorite moments was when we were walking around Saragossa and found a used bookstore. And I think we bought, what, Elenia, maybe 10 used books for 10 euros or something like that. And they're all in Spanish. And she's reading for pleasure now in Spanish and is loving it. And so those are all wonderful, wonderful things. And the other piece that hasn't really been touched upon, but, you know, she's making amazing friends in the SYA community. And I got to meet some of them while I was there. And so she's just grabbing the bull by the horns and just diving into the experience. And I'm certain will be forever changed for the better because of it, and will approach her life in a very different way because of having this year away.
Great. Thank you so much, Marlo, for those insights. I'm so glad you got to visit Elenia. We do have a question about that. Can families come and visit? We do encourage families to come and visit after a few months of the program. And in terms of transportation to our program, we offer a group flight, which is chaperoned, and then we also can work with you if there's a flight that works better for you and your family. All right, let's turn it over to Carmen just to talk a little bit about the decision-making process and what you've seen in Ashton since he's been away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carmen, and my pronouns are she and hers. And like Marlo shared, I think that for Ashton, he also knew freshman year that this was something that he was interested in. And we've had multiple conversations of the opportunity, what it might look like. And something that I can share is that my relationship with SYA began during our application process. You know, really got to know folks here in the Andover office. They were very helpful, very pleasant, very communicative. I've always knew what was going on. With COVID too, we were for some time scared that it might not happen. But very supportive through the whole process, and, you know, answered all my questions, helped with the application process, anything that we needed more information about, and so on. One of the things that I am the most excited about is Ashton's relationship with their host family. They're just amazing people, Anna and Ernesto. I feel like they're my family, and I've never met them in person. But, you know, very nice, always answer all my questions. I always check in. Actually, Ashton doesn't know this, but I check in just by messaging, asking, you know, how's Ashton doing? How's everyone in the home doing? And I feel that I really know the family very well, and that they take really good care of my son. And that was always something that I was concerned about. And also the communication there with Meghan has been amazing as well. Always keeps me up to date, and always shares beautiful pictures and videos. So I really get to see and experience what Ashton is experiencing. Concerning Ashton's growth, I don't even know where to begin. Like, I wasn't sure, because Ashton is, as a child, he's just outgoing and friendly and outspoken in general. But oh my God, like, I got to see him over break because he came home for the break. And I'm like, oh my God, who's this person? You know, like, just so independent and so confident. He's always been like that, but this is different. You know, I think that he has really, this experience has expanded his horizons. He has tried so many new things. I think that one of the things that I have enjoyed hearing about is the independent travel opportunities. He's traveled with friends and he's gone to see places and he sent pictures and videos. He even started a Spanish blog on YouTube that people follow. And as well, you know, I know that there's a group travel opportunity coming up and it sounds like they're going to Portugal. But, you know, Ashton definitely seems just so much more comfortable speaking the Spanish language, learning about the culture and interacting with folks in Spanish is just something that I have never seen. He had been taking Spanish for several years in high school. And I think the end of his middle school, he also took Spanish, but I never seen him put him into practice. And now he is just part of who he is. He loves it.
Can I piggyback on what Carmen just said about travel? One of the things that I have loved to hear about is Ilenia's independence in planning her independent travel now, and particularly how they break it down. So she travels with a group of 3 or 4 other people, and it turns out, maybe this won't always be the case, but Ilenia organizes the travel piece of it all, so their transportation. Somebody else handles finding the hotels that they're going to stay in. Somebody else handles food or other activities they're going to be doing. And the logistics of being able to do that at 16, 17 years old in a huge country such as Spain is incredibly impressive. And you know, all of their plans get checked by Meghan and the other staff at SYA. So we know that it's being put together well, but they need to figure it all out on their own. And that's one of the pieces that I absolutely love about hearing about her experience over there.
Thank you so much, Carmen and Marlo. I think, yeah, Meghan, if you could just touch on that process a little bit. I think we've seen a couple of questions about time independently, and if you're traveling, who do you go with and how does it get approved? And how do our US families how are they tied into that too?
Great. Yes, I can go for that. I just want to quickly state that independent travel can only be done in Spain. Sorry to burst anyone's Portugal bubble, but there's lots of wonderful places to go in Spain. That is for safety and my ability to get somewhere if necessary with more ease. So yes, independent travel is an option for students who earn that privilege. You have to show us that you're dedicated as a student at SYA, that you're putting in time with your host family, that you're speaking Spanish at school, all of those things to show that you're ready for that next step of having the independence of being out and traveling on your own. Ilenia has actually already turned in 2 independent day trip forms for the next 2 weekends. So she and her group are very on it with the organization. It's very impressive. So during the fall, we have students spend the first few months, the weekends in Saragosa, and then about mid-November, we open up the opportunity to do day or overnight trips. I guess for the month of November, you can do day travel. There's lots of places you can visit in just the day. And then we offer 1 weekend in the first semester for an overnight. And then for the second semester, obviously, there's a lot more time and students have had the opportunity to show us that they can handle independent travel. Because of the Omicron variant right now, there's a hiatus on overnight travel for the month of January, but that'll pick back up in February. So as one, I think it was Marlo who mentioned, I review the travel plans, and then there's a number of signatures, especially for overnight trips, that have to be given, and the parent signature is always the last one. So a parent can always decide, I prefer for this not to happen, or it sounds like, you need to be studying a little more, I'd rather you stay home this weekend. That's always the final decision of the parent. But we go ahead and make sure that everything is in order before the parent receives the form.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Carmen and Marlo and Meghan, for clarifying that and for sharing your insights about the SYA process. We are nearing the end here, so I'm going to jump into Q&A. We will move through these as fast as we can and thoroughly, of course. I do have a few questions about dates. So our dates for next year will be coming out in the next few weeks, but they will mirror our dates for this past year. So our students left right around September 5th. And the first semester ended December 17th. Our winter break is 3 weeks. We encourage families who are able to visit We do have a few students who return to the United States. They're in the minority. Most students do stay for that season, and that is the time that we encourage families to come visit, but that can happen under special circumstances. And then our second semester is January 8th through May 26th this year, and it will mirror that next year. And we do also have a spring break where we also encourage families to come visit if that is an option. So there were a couple questions about that. We also have a question about when do you get to connect with your host families? And we do give students, starting, I believe it was this year, the option to Zoom with their host family or even just email just to say a quick hello. I don't know if there's anything else to say on that question regarding prior communication to arrival for meeting or connecting with host families, Megan.
So we share the information in the summer once the matches are made. You all need that information additionally for the visa process. There's some paperwork that has to be turned in that has the family information as well. But then we also send the contact information, encourage students to be in touch with the families, and the families also get the information about their students. So that, I mean, if you two want to just quickly chime in, were you both in contact with your families prior to arrival?
I started emailing them right when I got their email address. Yeah.
Like Eleni, I reached out to my host family as fast as I could and downloaded WhatsApp as fast as I could.
Yes, before you all arrive, just have WhatsApp on your cell phone because it's pretty much the only way that people message each other here. So,
yeah. So a little bit about classwork. What happens if a student needs to take a class that's not offered? We do work with one schoolhouse. If there's a really specific class you need to take online, but we encourage students to do that either before they leave or after, and that requires planning on the student's part with their academic advisor at their sending school. Another similar question is about standard classes, aka some math or science classes. Math, we do have many options, which can be found on our course catalog online, and placement is just kind of based on your transcript coming into SYA. We also do have our students do a language assessment upon arrival, and just so that they can be placed in their language classes specifically with other students in their level. And just to reiterate, we do accept students who have a level 2, a minimum of level 2 in high school Spanish or 2 years of high school experience. And I would love to hear a little bit from Ashley and Elenia about kind of that transition and what they've seen either from themselves or from their friends who started right after that level 2, who were really nervous. What would you say to students who are feeling super intimidated right now about that language requirement or being fully immersed in the Spanish language?
If I could start, there's a person here at the school who, when they arrived, they barely spoke any Spanish. I remember them feeling very, very lost in classes and kind of scared that they were never going to get the hang of it. And now I've noticed, because we're in the same art class together, I've noticed how much they've progressed. And I watch them now make full presentations in Spanish, and when asked a question can respond right off the bat without even having to think about it. So I think that just by being here and by putting yourself forward and trying to speak in Spanish as much as possible, you just naturally learn the language.
Agreed. And just to add on to that, I feel like definitely coming to Spain and thinking about what it was going to be like, really immersing myself in the language. One of my biggest fears was, what if I can't communicate myself? What if I'm the worst at Spanish? And just thinking back on it, I just think it was ridiculous to even think that, because something that I really love about the SY Spain community is that, just the students themselves, it's a very collaborative environment. And, especially right when we got to Spain, we were all in the same boat. We were in a different country without our families, our friends, trying to grasp onto this new language and culture. And it didn't take us all long to realize that we were all in the same boat, and that the only way we were going to get acquainted and comfortable is if we helped each other. And I feel like that's a huge part of the process, and just, embracing that and being comfortable with making mistakes and knowing that you'll have teachers and classmates to help you is just something that, it's hard to picture and imagine, but it's very important that you all know that it does happen.
That's great. Thank you both so much. We have another question about kind of class classwork load or homework load. And, we always say that we know that learning a new language, living with a host family can be really tiring. And we want you to be able to sit at those 4-hour-long meals and really just soak it all in and listen and absorb as much as you can. But maybe could one of you talk a little bit about the kind of homework load and how you're managing that, and do you feel like you have enough time to really enjoy and kind of be with your host family?
Do either of you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I can chime in a little.
Okay.
Something that I really appreciate about SYA is the balance that there is in the just curriculum. I feel that a lot of classes, the majority of classes, I would say that a large part of the actual work we do is the immersion, having conversations with our host families about certain festivals going on in Saragosa, or talking to our host families about the education system here in Spain. And I feel like it balances out a lot throughout all of the classes, regardless the subject. It could be an English class where we do a lot of reading around, arriving in a new place and, living in a different country, which I think is a really interesting way of, incorporating English into the SY Spain curriculum. But I just feel like overall, a lot of our classes, they're centered around us being in Spain and taking advantage of that opportunity. So when I really think about my workload and the work I do have to do, I think it's important to say that, yes, we do have homework and we have work to do, and you have to work hard, to reach your greatest abilities. But I would say that SYI does a great job at, really taking advantage of the fact that we're here in Spain and applying it to our academics in the curriculum.
Yeah, I would just chime in quickly. I think it does depend a lot on, the student's homeschool experience. We have some students who come and say there's way much less homework than they had at their homeschool. We have other students who come and say there's more. So there's also that kind of balancing out. And I do think it's important to also say, that if students ask for an extension, students need extra time for something, they need extra help with things, we're always there, of course, to help and offer those things as well. I saw, Maggie, a question about semester and full year. Do you want me to jump into that one?
Yep, go for it.
Okay, so as you all know, we now have a semester program. This was our first year having the semester program. So in the fall, we had 12 students that were on the semester and left, sadly, on the 17th of December. And then we were very excited, though, of course, to welcome our new group of semester students that are here for the second semester. We have 11 students that are here for the second semester. I mean, the biggest obvious difference is time. There's a huge difference between being here for a semester and being here for a full year. The first semester goes by very fast, as does the second semester, but the first semester is on the calendar shorter. And there's a lot of transitioning. There's a lot of getting used to using Spanish, getting used to your family, all of those things that happen in the fall. And we do see our full year students when they get back, it's like they're coming back home. There's none of that nervousness that they had at the beginning. But I don't know, I think Elenia and Ashton, I also have been in touch with our first semester students, but could you two both talk a little bit about what you've heard from them, the students that left?
Ashton, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. I happened to be here, or in the beginning of the first semester, I happened to be here at SY Spain with 3 other students from my sending school. 3 of us, including myself, are full year students, and one of them was a semester student. And, I've kept in touch with this semester student because even before coming to SYA, we were really good friends. And, we've been texting really recently since, we're still in that transition period from first semester to second semester, and she's getting settled in back at home. And, she has expressed to me that even though, she wanted to go back home and see her family and kind of just feel at home, she kind of feels like she's left another home behind. And I feel like that says a lot about, one, the experience and relationships you create here at SY Spain, but also just, that she's told me that if she could have stayed, she definitely would have. And, hearing that, especially as we approach the end of the first semester, I was kind of expected because, I love it here in Spain, and I was really sad that my friend was leaving, but couldn't imagine myself leaving. But it's a really interesting decision to make, because I know when I was thinking about doing SYA, the kind of semester versus full year was something that I had up in my head and I wasn't really sure. And even in the moment when I stepped on the plane, I was like, am I really going to Spain for a full year? But something deep in me told me that, I just had to just go for it, jump into it. And I'm glad that I made the decision that I did because, the first semester I felt like for me is when I was able to just get settled in and acquainted with living in Spain. And now is when I know I'm going to be able to make my most growth, not only as a Spanish speaker, but as an individual and a person. And I'm just looking forward to what the rest of the year will bring.
Yeah, I just want to, Elena, you go real quick. And then I do want to say one quick thing about the semester program.
All right. Just to add on with what Ashton said, for me, the first semester felt like almost the dress rehearsal to the second semester. I felt I didn't feel like I was fully part of the city yet, part of the community here in Saragosa. I felt like I was still learning it, that I was still almost like a tourist the entire time, kind of observing the city and appreciating it, but not truly living here. And then coming back from the vacation that I took with my parents, it did feel like coming back home. Like I felt like I was coming back to my bed, to my house, to my family. I was excited to go back to my school, to go back to my favorite restaurants that I knew and where people knew me. And so I feel like now I'm actually living here in Spain as a local instead of just as a tourist. So I do feel like having the second semester to really live feeling grounded here in the city is super important.
Yeah, I just want to quickly just say that there is not an option for students to extend. We had multiple first semester students make kind of official pleas to be able to stay for the second semester, but mostly because we have another group of students coming in for the second semester, our school space is quite small. We cannot handle having 75 students. But also the visa process, the visas end at the holiday, so that's not easy to extend. And some of our host families for second semester students were also host families for first semester students. So it is a really important thing to think about because once that decision's made, it's not something that can be changed.
Right. We have a few questions also about acceptance rates and how hard is it to get into SYA Spain, and that really depends on the year. Our full class is fully new at the start of each academic year. So for that reason, we don't, have a rate, but it is a competitive program and we encourage you to apply. Our semester application pool is a little bit more competitive because our space is limited, but it does, if that's the best option for you, we highly encourage you to apply. As I think Marla mentioned, going through the process of applying is extremely useful as you head into that college and university application process in a few years. Speaking of colleges and universities, we have a few questions about SAT options, ACT, tutoring. Meghan, can you talk a little bit about how that's offered on campus, or if students have a private tutor that they would like to continue working with?
Yes, of course. So we do offer we are an SAT testing center. So we have the same testing dates, and students can take both the PSAT and the SAT on our campus. We do not offer the ACT because for the ACT to be taken abroad, it's all done online, and we don't have the capacity to offer the ACT online. We have had a few students over the last few years who have gone to a testing center in Madrid or in Barcelona in order to take the ACT. So that's something we can set up for students that need to do that. We have our fantastic college counselor, Pauline, who works with students, and all of our students have method test prep accounts that they can use to help them prep for the SAT test, for the standardized tests. Not really what we want our students to be spending too much time on, but unfortunately, these are still important tests in the US for universities. So students are welcome to continue to work with tutors that they have. They just have to make sure that those appointments don't interfere with any of the SYA classes that they have, obviously, or time with their host families. Just make sure that they can find a time that works well for them that's during their free time.
Great, thank you so much for that. We do have multiple questions about service-oriented opportunities. I know Meghan answered in the chat that there are some volunteer and service opportunities. I also thought this would be a good time to touch on affinity spaces. I know that's kind of a student-led process at the start of the year, but if we could talk a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of open up for students if they want to start any kind of clubs or affinity groups. We've had a pretty robust students of color groups in the past. So that's definitely something that is able to, where students are welcome to use our space for any kind of clubs or groups that they would like to have at school. We also have students who, of course, are part of groups outside of school. There's some students 2 years ago that were part of a kind of a Jewish club that was outside of school, that they would go and participate in some activities that were done around the high holidays. So those are things that students can also look into.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. We are going to wrap up here in the next minute or two. So a couple kind of questions that I can answer quickly. Our students are mostly juniors, and we do also have a few sophomores and a few seniors. So all are welcome to apply going into grades 10, 11, and 12. And our application is due February 10th. So we our website has a link right to the application, and we do hope that you will contact me probably in this process. I will also put my email in the chat as well, so that you have your point person if we didn't get to your question. These were all phenomenal questions. And I just want to end with a big thank you. Elenia, Megan, Marlo, Ashton, Carmen, and to all of you for attending this exciting webinar. This was a great session, and I know a lot of folks have been really excited to touch base with our students on the ground in Spain, and we appreciate your time. I know it's late in Spain, and so I will put my email into the chat bar, and I can also, of course, if you have a question, I can refer you to Megan or our parent reference program if that would be helpful. But again, our application is due February 10th. We appreciate all of your time. Thank you, panelists. Thank you for everyone for coming, and we hope that you have a great rest of your day or night. Buenas noches en España, y hasta luego. See you soon.
Yes, it's just dinner time here, actually, so we're good.
There we go.
All right. Hasta luego. Gracias.